Hello, Linda here, and this is No Frills ASMR. I found this. I thought we could look at it. It says United States. And again, United States in cursive. It's so big, I think it's going to be too big to look at all at once. We'll have to upside down. Sorry. Okay. It's too big. So it is a large map of the United States. And I just kind of glanced at it. And it says the United States and adjoining portions of Canada and Mexico, compiled and drawn in the cartographic section of the National Geographic Society for the National Geographic magazine, Gilbert Grosvenor, editor. And then down here it says Washington, December 1940. So that's the part that I thought was interesting, because that I'm aware of, there are a few things that wouldn't yet be on this map in 1940. Anybody have thoughts on what those things might be? Yeah, so as you can see, I don't know, this map's too big to show all at once. Okay, over here, I don't know if this is going to work, is where we'd usually find down here. They'd have Alaska and Hawaii. Well, they weren't states yet. They didn't become states until 1959. Part of that I think we found out in the Alaska video I did about 3 weeks ago, if you want to learn a little more about Alaska and how large it is. Another thing is that there weren't yet interstates. That they hadn't been built yet. So if you wanted to travel across country, you had to drive on 2-lane highways. Roads. I do think this is Route 66, and I think it was finished in 1939. They finished paving Route 66. It took like 10 years to build it, and it went from Chicago to LA, passing 2,000 miles along the way. Now, I'm quoting the song if you didn't know. So it went from Chicago to St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, looking mighty pretty. And then it went through, let's see. So this is it right here, Joplin, Missouri. It's funny, I don't see it right here. It must go down. It must go down here. And then it goes through Gallup, New Mexico. Where's Gallup? And they say Oklahoma City looks. Okay, so it comes down here to Oklahoma City. And then Amarillo. And so it goes across here. I actually don't see Gallup. I know anybody from New Mexico is like, durr. It's here somewhere. Oh, there's Gallup. Gallup, New Mexico. Flagstaff, Arizona. Don't forget Winona. Kingman. And then it goes, where's it going? It's in California. Sorry, my friends, for all the... I just didn't account for how big this map is. I don't know if this video will see the light of day. We'll see. Kingman, and then... well, it goes to LA, so it goes across here. This must be it all the way right here. Hold on a minute. Let me just look at something real quick. Hold on. Route 66. Okay, yeah. Barstow. Kingman, it goes up after Kingman to Barstow and down. Okay, yeah. There's Route 66, so it goes Chicago all the way there. All right. So, Hawaii and Alaska were not yet states. The interstates weren't built yet. But the thing that I found really interesting, what I noticed on this map was this little map here. Let me see if I can hold it up for you. And what this is the population from the census of 1940. And they show states that have gained population and states that lost population. And Michigan picked up a lot of population, and my sense is that the auto industries were booming in the 1940s. So a lot of people were moving there. But the thing I noticed the most were all these states: North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. In 1940, Oklahoma lost 66,000 people, Kansas 81,000 people, Nebraska 64,000, South Dakota 51,000, and North Dakota 41,000. And so I saw that, and at first I was like, why were people leaving here? And then I remembered the Dust Bowl. And so I thought that was interesting. The worst area, I looked up the Dust Bowl after that, and the worst area for, dust was right here in the panhandle of Oklahoma, right in this area. But all these states were affected, and people left these states, like they call them Okies, out of Oklahoma, and they went to California, and then a lot of people went up to like Michigan to work in the auto industry. But basically, they either left because they couldn't afford their mortgages anymore, or they were sharecroppers and they just weren't making money, and so they left for that. A lot of people died because the clouds. Hold on, I have a picture. Hold on, if I can find out. I'm sorry for the disarray of this video. It's Thanksgiving holiday. I haven't. Look at this crazy, is a dust storm. And see these houses, I mean, they're just about to get covered in this dust. And the dust, it was like real fine particles. And people would breathe it in and they'd get, I think it was called dust pneumonia. And it killed a lot of people who died from dust pneumonia, or who died just from poverty because of not being able to farm their land, and starvation. I mean, this is right after the Great Depression, or during the Great Depression. Hold on. So let's look in here real quick. I'm sorry. I'm going to move this out of the way. Oh, sorry. Okay. Let's see if they have the Dust Bowl in here. I didn't even look at this. Let's see. Dust Bowl 276. You're in here, Jack. 276. 73, 74, 75, 76. And they have the Great Depression, the Great Slowdown in the American economy, the worst in the country's history, which began in 1929 and lasted until the early 1940s. So it was still ongoing during the Dust Bowl. So that many banks and businesses failed, and millions of people lost their jobs. And then they say, see, Dust Bowl, okay? Dust Bowl, a parched region of the Great Plains, including parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, where a combination of drought and soil erosion created enormous dust storms in the 1930s. The novel The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck describes the plight of the Okies and the Arkies. Arkies are from Arkansas, I guess. Uprooted by the drought and forced to migrate to California. What else do they say to look up? Let's see. They say, see Dust Bowl, see Fireside Chats. Okay. Fireside Chats. A series of informal radio addresses given by Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s. In his fireside chats, Roosevelt sought to explain his policies to the American public and to calm fears about the Great Depression. Hoovervilles. Oh, I've heard of Hoovervilles. I feel like I listened to a podcast about Hoovervilles. Let's see, Hoovervilles. Encampments of the poor and homeless that sprang up during the Great Depression. They were named with ironic intent after President Herbert Hoover, who was in office when the Depression started. What else do they say? New Deal. New Deal. A group of government programs and policies established under President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s. The New Deal was designed to improve conditions for persons suffering in the Great Depression. The project of the New Deal included the Social Security System, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and the Works Progress Administration. The New Deal remains controversial. Some have criticized it as too expensive and have called it an inadvisable expansion of federal control over the American economy. Others have insisted that the New Deal was an appropriate response to desperate conditions and produced programs of continuing value. See, you guys, political disagreements, they've been around since the beginning of our democracy. It's just the way it is. What else do we have? Roosevelt, and then crash of 1929. Okay, we'll read about Roosevelt. Let's see. Maybe CFG, JJ, Calvin, P, QR. Are you guys people who can do the alphabet in your head without saying it? Because I always have to go through it in my head. I don't just know, like, I realized this while playing Scrabble recently, and you pick a letter at the beginning, and whoever's closest to, like, I don't know why we were doing closest to S goes first. And everybody, my husband and my son, both knew exactly how close they were to S, and I had to, like, go through the alphabet with each letter to figure out who was closest. And I realized everybody thinks differently. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, just different. Okay, Theodore Roosevelt. A political leader of the late 19th and early 20th century, Roosevelt was president from 1901 to 1909. Oh, I'm looking up. That's Theodore. We want Franklin D. Roosevelt. I was like, what? How does that make sense? Okay, Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. A political leader of the 20th century, Roosevelt was president from 1933 to 1945, longer than anyone else in American history. That's impressive. You know why? He was elected 4 times, so they didn't have term limits at the time. Roosevelt, a Democrat who had been governor of New York, defeated President Herbert Hoover in the election of 1932. He took office at one of the worst points in the Great Depression, but told the American public, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The early part of his presidency is remembered for the New Deal, a group of government programs designed to reverse the devastating effects of the Depression. He used fireside chats over the radio to build public support for his policies. In the later years of his presidency, he attempted to support the Allies in World War II without bringing the United States into the war. At this time, he made his speech announcing the 4 freedoms. After the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States entered the war. Roosevelt began the Manhattan Project, which produced the atomic bomb, a weapon that after his death brought a quick but highly controversial end to the war. Near the war's end, Roosevelt negotiated the Yalta Agreement with Britain and the Soviet Union. He died a few weeks before Germany surrendered and before the end of the war with Japan. Roosevelt's appearance seemed designed to produce confidence in a nation discouraged by economic trials. He was frequently portrayed as sticking out his chin, grinning, and smoking a cigarette in a holder. That's how I was thinking. He had suffered an attack of poliomyelitis when he was in his 30s, and for the rest of his life could not walk unassisted. Polio. Okay. Photographers were therefore careful not to show him below the waist. So there he is. He was in a wheelchair, but they never showed it. So the American public wasn't really aware of that. All right, that was interesting. So what do we have left to look up? Crash of 1929. Although I feel like having read that, now I want to look up, the Four Freedoms. I've never heard of that. The Yalta Agreement, which I've heard of like in high school, but I don't really remember. I mean, that was just the end of the war. Not just, but the end of the war. But that's probably for another day. Okay. So, crash of 1929. I just saw Bonnie and Clyde back there. Okay. Crash of 1929 stock market. An enormous decrease in stock prices on the stock exchange of Wall Street in late October 1929. This crash began the Great Depression. So the stock market took a giant dive in 1929. So everybody's already poor. I mean, we're talking, people were so poor that they were waiting in line to get a piece of bread. This isn't the kind of poor like, oh, I can't buy myself, hokas this month. This is like desperate times. And then the Dust Bowl comes. And part of it was because, as my understanding reading about it, they had ideas about how you have to what's the word for it? Like put the land in terracing to keep erosion and, at bay. But they were just in a rush to farm it all, I think, and it was making a lot of money. So they tore up all the grasses and everything that would have kept the land in place, and they just did it all flat instead of terracing it. And so when the wind would kick up, it would just start like a dust storm. I'll explain that. And it would cover houses, like literally cover houses, cover their cars. It would just ruin the land. And how when you're at the beach, you get dust, you get sand, and you can't get it out all of, this was a fine dust, and it would just lock up engines of cars. It would just ruin everything. So desperate. So people left there. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, this, and the fact that Detroit, they actually talk about Detroit here, places of more than 1 million people, and they showed Detroit, and then 500,000 to 1 million Baltimore, 100,000 to 500,000 Seattle, 20,000 to 100,000 Savannah, less than 20,000 West Point. So, I think at that time Detroit was maybe the fourth largest city. I think maybe it was L.A., New York. Well, maybe it was the third largest. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, I guess. I feel like I did, but I don't remember. But I don't know what this is. I didn't quite understand. It says, I'll tell you what it says, and if I read, first of all, I'll show it to you. If anybody feels like they know more, feel free to comment. So this says, I don't know if you can see it. It says, GHQ Air Force Headquarters, Bowling, B-O-L, Bowling Field, D.C., Air Defense Command Headquarters, Mitchell Field, New York. And then they have grouping of infantry divisions into corps and of corps into field armies. You say that corps, right? C-O-R-P-S. It's not corps, it's corps. I think so. Like Corps of Engineers. Anyway, but so they show the 8th, the 9th, 30th Division, and they show the different divisions are by these they're color coded. So was that pre-World War II kind of preparing for if somebody attacked the U.S.? Or is this something we always have, that we have? I mean, I know we have defense set up. I've just never seen a map like this with all the defense, but that just might be. I haven't looked at maps enough. But it says National Defense, General Staff War Department, and it has all the headquarters and Army post and the Air District headquarters. So I don't know, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen a map like that with all the different. So I don't know if this was just something that I just don't know. I don't know much about that. So yeah, so that was pretty neat. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this map that I found super interesting. I took a lot of time just staring at it. Can you imagine, like, let's say you live in Philadelphia and you want to go even just to, I don't know, Dayton. That would probably now be like it's still a long trip. I bet it's a 9-hour drive without stops. But if you were driving on 2-lane roads that don't even go straight across, that would have taken you days just to make that drive. And I even wonder if all those roads would be paved. I bet they wouldn't. I bet a lot of them wouldn't be. It's kind of wild to think. What a difference, you know. So anyway, thank you guys for coming and watching. Sorry it was sort of chaotic and my map was too big. I imagine this map. Have you seen that commercial where they have the lady who can tell if things fit? I apparently am not that person because my mental image was this map sitting flat. And that's ridiculous. Anyway, all right, I'll end it with trying to fold the map, so that will be hilarious.